Welcome everyone. My name is Michelle Rivera-Span and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for Taylor & Francis, and I oversee the North America library team. And today what we are going to hopefully have is a very engaging discussion on a topic that I know is important to students, faculty, librarians, and the overall institution, and that's on textbook affordability. As the cost for course materials and textbooks continue to rise, it's becoming evident that we do need to, the faculty and librarians do need to come together to provide cost-effective resources for students. And so today what we want to do is during this session, we're going to present 4 different perspectives on this topic. You will hear from Donna Shaw with EBSCO. My colleague Emily Littlehale is also a Senior Marketing Manager at Taylor & Francis. And then from George Hart, who is with the University of Massachusetts Lowell. I do want to encourage you during the session to feel free to ask any questions, interject your thoughts, comments, opinions, because we do want to hear from you. We want to know, are you encountering the same challenges? Do you have a success story? Do you have the support of your institution and faculty? So no need to wait till the end. Feel free to interject whenever. And with that being said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Donna.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. So, I'm a little short for this, aren't I? So by way of background, I've been at EBSCO for just about 3 years. I'm a director of product management. I've been in product management for the better part of my career, probably around 25 years, so quite a while. I worked on various different products over those years. And while I don't have any specific background in library, my mother was a librarian, so I kind of like to think it's in my blood. So I'd like to start our presentation today with a single number, 95. What could possibly be the significance of this number? Okay, it wasn't the year that I graduated college, and for those of you who thought that, I thank you. But actually, this does represent a statistic from a survey that was done by Taylor & Francis in conjunction with Library Journal about textbook affordability. And this particular survey was done with about 230 librarians. And when I read this statistic stood out to me more than anything. 95% of institutions said that textbook affordability was a major concern for students. Okay, so as a product manager, it's my job to understand market problems and be able to think about the persona for whom I'm building product. And that happens really very much by data. So it's quantitative data, like using survey results like the one I mentioned previously. It's also qualitative data, talking to many, many customers and potential customers to really try to understand what are the market problems and challenges they're faced with. And what has emerged is 4 key problems that I want to discuss with you all today. The first one is about cost. So Michelle already mentioned this, the price of textbooks are continuing to rise year over year. And I can tell you that this has hit my household personally. I have 4 kids in their 20s. They all recently graduated college, as recently as this past year. And the price of textbooks and how we were paying for them absolutely came home. So it definitely was an issue for me. And another interesting statistic that I found in this survey was about how textbook affordability is directly related to student success. And I suppose that's obvious, right? Because if a student doesn't have access to the textbook because they can't afford it, it's going to be difficult for them to be able to do well in that class. And I want to say that I think it's really important that we want our students to really be focused on using the textbook and really spending way less time worrying about how they're going to pay for it. The second problem is around location. So for faculty and librarians who really do care about textbook affordability, about providing some alternative affordable option, it's very difficult to find them. These things, open educational resources, DRM-free, unlimited user access ebooks, are located across a myriad of sites. And what happens is it becomes a time-consuming a manual process to be able to find them. And what we have heard is that faculty end up not being able to invest the time and thus sticking with their current textbook, which is one that the students have to pay for. So they stick with the status quo because it's the easiest way for them to be able to deal with it. The third problem is around communication. And what I have heard is that the communication between faculty and librarians can sometimes be challenging. Like feedback I have gotten is that faculty aren't always seeking out you, the librarian, to be able to help them find an affordable alternative for their class. In fact, faculty may not always realize that you're willing to help them acquire an ebook that they can then make available to their students at no cost. And then, of course, the challenge for librarians is they don't really have insight to what types of resources that their faculty are looking to adopt. Real communication issue. And finally, this is very much around being able to track usage of library resources in order to be able to prove the value of those resources. And I have to tell you a little story that my co-presenters have already heard me say, but it's about my mother. So I mentioned to you that my mother was a librarian, and she worked for a nonprofit organization in New York City called the Blaustein Library. It no longer exists today. And I have to tell you that my mother, over the years, has been very good to me in allowing me to share my presentations with her by way of rehearsal before conferences like this. And as I mentioned, I worked on many different products and a lot of different technologies. And she'd be great. She'd be like, "Honey, you sound wonderful, but I really have no idea what you're talking about." But when I was preparing for this presentation, and I got to this point, it really, really resonated with her. So you can imagine, right? She was the librarian of a nonprofit organization. Money was tight, budget was tight, and she really wanted to make sure that the resources that she was acquiring were going to be valuable to her patrons. And she spent time reaching out to them, communicating with them, trying to understand what resources are going to be useful to you so I can still get my budget for next year. And here's the kicker. My mom's 89. No digital age then, right? This was a manual process, right? So I feel like this is one of those challenges that has withstood the test of time. So at EBSCO, we have delivered a product called Faculty Select, which attempts to address these challenges by providing a single location where faculty can discover open educational resources, can find and acquire through the library DRM-free, unlimited user access ebooks from top academic publishers like Taylor and Francis, and then make them available to students at no cost. It's a win all around. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Michelle and Emily, who are going to talk more about the details of these surveys. It's fascinating data. Thank you for listening.
So earlier, Donna referenced the Library Journal Textbook Affordability Survey that we did. Taylor and Francis partnered with Library Journal to get this perspective of textbook affordability from the academic librarian's perspective. And so Library Journal actually launched that survey in the spring of this year. And we were able to garner about 238 responses from librarians across North America. And in order to complement that, we also...
Yeah, so to complement that librarian report, we also surveyed a broad selection of higher education faculty. And our intention there was really to gather insight about their experiences with textbook affordability and how this related and affected their students, what the relationship was there. And also how it affected course planning and then overall access to course materials. The majority of our respondents, just to give you guys an idea of sort of what the spread was, We had about 200 responses total. The majority of those respondents were at four-year institutions, and there was a pretty straight mix of both public and private institutions in our respondents. Population of full-time students ranged from about 1,000 to over 30,000. So it's a pretty broad group with a pretty broad range of experience. The faculty who responded also taught in a range of subject areas. We had respondents who taught in the humanities, the social sciences, and STEM as well. And while most of them taught undergraduate courses, about 1/3 of our respondents were also teaching at the graduate level. So we were looking to gather as many like-for-like responses as we could, but after getting the librarian responses back, we found that there were a few answers that we hadn't taken into consideration for the librarian answers that we had provided for those multiple choice questions. So we then incorporated those answer options into the faculty survey so that faculty could respond on those topics. So there will be a little bit of a discrepancy in some of the data that we'll be presenting, but none that should really impact the overall results and I think import of what we have to say.
So the final survey and report for the faculty version will not be ready until later on this month, I believe. But what Emily and I want to do is highlight some key statistics and findings from around 3 themes that we gathered from the survey and the report. And those are around affordability, communication and collaboration, and access from the library and faculty perspective. A lot of the challenges that Donna mentioned, we actually were able to validate with the report. I would also like to mention that Lisa Pettis here with Library Journal, who's a news editor, and really helped with that survey as well with the faculty portion of the survey.
So Donna started us off with a pretty shocking number, that 95%. So we have a lot of numbers to throw at you today, but we'll start off with this one, which obviously is 73. So what we found was that 73% of faculty reported that affordability was a major concern for them. They also reported that it was a major concern for about 87% of their students. So kind of interesting to see that discrepancy between what librarians and what faculty are reporting in terms of student concern. In contrast to that, though, only 61% of faculty always factor in price when selecting required course materials. So their effort to find affordable materials isn't in proportion to their level of concern. We kind of think that there may be, a little bit more priority placed at this point on finding the best possible materials, as opposed to finding materials that are good enough, but a little less expensive. We also asked faculty if price was a factor that would cause them to change materials, and 62% responded yes, which is interesting because it aligns with that proportion who factor in cost when selecting materials, but again highlights that same disparity between that level of concern, that 73%, and then that motivation to actually take action and address the problem.
So we also asked librarians to what degree is course material a concern. And so librarians actually feel that there's a wide gap between the institution and their belief as to textbook affordability being a concern. They report that it's only 61% of librarians reported that textbook affordability is a major concern, whereas we're saying it's 95% for students. And what we found this statistic interesting is because based on student success rates, we would think if a student doesn't have access to their course materials, they're going to underperform, and ultimately that will impact the success of the institution. And one other thing to note is that librarians reported that 6 out of 10 students use library resources in place of their course materials in order to save money. So there is that disconnect that we keep seeing.
So we asked faculty why they incorporated digital resources into their classes. And what we found was that 70% of faculty report that affordability is a major driver to motivate them to adopt digital resources in the classroom. but that in kind of contrast to that, it's not what we'll see later on is it's not necessarily what they see, affordability is not necessarily what they see as the greatest benefit to students. Also worth noting here is that when asked if they thought incorporating digital materials could help students with affordability issues, 48% said yes, and 34% said maybe. So there's still a fair amount of uncertainty when it comes to the value of those digital resources as a solution to affordability.
What we're seeing also is that from the library perspective, they report that 60% of faculty are somewhat receptive, 25% are receptive to the idea of integrating digital materials into coursework. I mean, these numbers show that there is a recognition of an issue, but I mean, I think there's more room for proactive response from faculty to play a bigger role in helping with textbook affordability. And we'll talk a little bit later about why this might be. So, even though affordability is a concern for faculty and students, librarians cite that on average, we love using our numbers, 19% of faculty members currently work with library staff to reduce textbook costs, just 19%. This stood out to us because, I mean, from our perspective, is that the resources that are available through the library are a clear path to reducing costs for students and providing them with more affordable options when it comes to course materials.
So to get a better sense of how faculty and librarians were working together to solve the issue of affordability and just kind of in general, we asked both groups how they were interacting. The responses we got show a pretty large disparity. So while the librarians are reporting a lot of interaction, the majority of faculty responded that they don't interact with their library. Again, so really those responses kind of weighted at the bottom with the none of the above option. And as the slide shows, we gave respondents a number of options and asked them to select all that applied. So the fact that we had the majority of faculty select that none of the above, as opposed to other, for instance, I think is kind of significant and also something that really merits further investigation. We can really only speculate about why this might be, why we might see this disparity, but you know, definitely something that we definitely want to dig into a little bit more.
I can say from doing other surveys and other reports and meeting with librarians, I think that librarians are always trying to validate their value to the institution and to faculty so that they are definitely recording their success at their tactics and stuff. So, you know, when in this survey we had asked, how are you assessing the activities that you're doing? How do you know that you're being successful in helping to stem the textbook to stem costs for textbooks? And 56% cited an increased number of faculty members and course sections participating. 52% reported word of mouth, and 44% stated dollars saved on textbook purchases by working with the bookstore as well. So I think there's still room for improvement because a quarter of the librarians have not made assessments of their efforts. So I think that that's just something, that's what we're speculating as to why there's that disconnect between the librarians and faculty.
And to speculate a bit further, faculty, we're kind of thinking, really are only, you know, the library isn't really top of mind for them. It's only a resource when they need it. So library outreach efforts aren't registering with them until they're in a position where there's something that they need from the library. This could lead to faculty just kind of under-reporting librarians' efforts to work with them. Some of the write-in answers that we got kind of supported this and provided a little bit more insight. So faculty expressed that they wanted librarians to make them aware of the resources that are available, be more receptive to their needs, get in touch directly rather than through mass emails. So it really seems that faculty are looking to librarians to make the first move But librarians feel that they don't get a response from faculty when they take that, they take that action. So it's a real communication breakdown.
Librarians are actively pursuing ways to stem the high cost of textbooks for students. As 93% say they work with faculty to help make digital alternative resources available to them.
So as this slide shows, faculty are really using a range of resources when it comes to digital materials, but they seem to be relying primarily on their own expertise, even when they're using materials they could get through the library. The library, again, isn't really top of mind for faculty as a resource. They're much more likely to go to the open web. There's a lot of interest in particular in streaming media, downloadable video, assets that they can easily access without guidance from anyone else. So this really aligns, again, with that underreporting that faculty may be doing. They're turning to themselves, using their own resources, their own knowledge of what's available in their field of study to find the resources that they need, rather than looking outward for support. So again, 63% of respondents used downloadable or streaming media, and that was the most heavily used of the options that we listed. In comparison to that, we saw only about 37% cited usage of databases. And most of what faculty report using from the library, so databases, course reserves, journal articles, are still kind of self-serve and don't require a huge amount of collaboration with librarians.
So one of the questions that was asked on both the faculty survey and the librarian survey was, what would aid libraries and faculty to collaboratively stem the cost of textbook affordability? And these were all open responses that we took from the survey. Librarians are asking for I don't want you to read it, we'll read them out and stuff. It's just kind of really highlights the two different thought processes between librarians and faculty. Librarians want inclusion in course development, get faculty and librarians together to talk about how we can help. They want faculty buy-in, liaisons and faculty working together to curate materials for courses. Librarians have also reported that they need to educate faculty on what goes into the cost of textbooks and course materials. And I love the last one, really, more communication between librarians and faculty that is initiated from the librarian side, requesting to visit with faculty members at a faculty meeting about what librarians can do to support faculty and students. And then you'll hear the flip side with faculty.
So the flip side, faculty responses, I don't need their support. Digital resources should become more priority than print these days. Receiving a list of new resources, both print and electronic, from the library of each department or program would increase connection between faculty and the library resources, as well as assisting faculty to include quality materials and saving time for faculty. Coordinate and communicate materials, especially e-textbooks, available for my course. Making us more aware of what resources are available to us through our campus library. Helping suggest digital resources for classes. Contacting me directly instead of mass emails. I tend to put off reading or acting when the message is meant for many others. And they're accommodating if I request them. However, they don't extend a visit to me to let me know what's available.
So those were actually open-ended questions and responses from faculty. So, I mean, obviously, I know that we're always trying to say, okay, how can we help you? How can you communicate with faculty? And I know that librarians have a challenge. You can't email them. They don't want, they only want you when they need you. So when they feel that they need you.
So the final theme that we wanted to talk about was something that really only stood out in the faculty responses, but we felt that it did merit a few comments. So one major factor for faculty was ease of access for students. So while affordability does motivate instructors to select digital resources in the first place, as we saw, 70% of faculty were thinking about affordability when selecting the option of digital resources, they actually report that the greatest benefit to students is the easy access that they have to those digital resources. So it's important, I think, to note here that affordability is a component of access, right? You know, you need to be able to afford, or you can't gain access. But in most cases, when talking about access, faculty seemed to be referring to the fact that students could get to their course materials any time of day. They had 24/7 access to what they needed, and all they really needed was an internet-connected device. Related to this, some faculty reported a lack of internet connectivity or challenges around internet connectivity that was an obstacle to students. And again, this kind of touches on that question of affordability. So we see that sort of access and affordability kind of coming together and merging a little bit once again. And this suggests that for some, these two issues may be inextricable from each other. So a couple more points on access that we just wanted to leave you with sort of as food for thought. Many respondents were unsure about the benefit of students accessing digital resources through the library. In other words, faculty weren't sure. Some of them expressed actually not being sure what the value of was for their students. I don't know why my students would go to the library to access these materials.
We're not making
So, but the thing is, we kind of wondered in reading responses like that, if that had more to do with the types of resources that they're using. So again, a lot of streaming media, downloadable resources that their students can get access to from their dorm rooms or their home. They don't really need to think about being in the library specifically to get those materials, right? So finally, just, you know, what we'll kind of leave off with is that one of faculty's pain points involving digital resources is that a lot of the material that they want isn't available. This can be due to copyright, other reasons. They do seem to value the ability to see what they consider the best fit for their course. They want to have access to that. So the fact that it may not always be an option that they can get electronically might impact their interest in pursuing that option. So, you know, ultimately, if those materials aren't available because of copyright limitations, faculty may not feel motivated to explore more affordable options when they can just order a print book off of Amazon. So we're now going to introduce George Hart, who will speak about his experience with many of these issues based on his time as a librarian at University of Massachusetts Lowell.
All right. What a wonderful segue. My job basically is to report to you what we're doing at Lowell using the tool, the Faculty Select database that EBSCO's rolled out, in the context of the data that these two amazing surveys are kind of yielding. It's sad, some of it is, certainly it's challenging. But what I want to do is I want to be very, very focused. I want to sort of basically present a recipe to use the Faculty Select to provide free to student textbooks. And at the end, maybe I'll give you a little bit of a rationale, but I think a little more, but it's clear that the appetite is there. The students, the trustees, everybody, there's appetite to lower the cost of textbooks. So we want to cook something up. So we want a recipe, kind of a cookbook. We called it cookbook, Who Doesn't Want to Be a Hero? Because called one faculty member and said, we found an ebook that we can purchase and it's unlimited use for all your students, and you'd save them $30,000 and you would be a hero. So she said, hey, who doesn't want to be a hero? So that became our new program. And it is my #1 priority. It's been on the radar since probably May, as we were doing our new budget. It's the provost every time he meets me, how's it going, how's it going, how's it going? It's like, they're obsessed with it. They took in May and June, in order to raise the tech fee and to make it more palatable, they said a big chunk of this tech fee is going to go to purchase unlimited use ebooks that will substitute for your textbooks. And students loved it. and I got $100,000 at the beginning of the fiscal year, which which I'm trying. It's not so easy. The survey results will show you it's not as easy. But with the new tool that we have, things have gotten a lot more promising. So can I just move forward here? So the recipe for who wants to be a hero. And again, please jump in with any questions because, like every recipe, I got a cup of sugar here and some garlic. And it's really in the weeds, sort of. What a metaphor, right? So you should stop me because I could be going places that I don't have you with me. So just raise your hand and stop me. So I'm obviously under a lot of pressure. The money's burning a hole in my pocket. I've got this new product, so I gotta get stuff going. So what we did is we did a lot of testing over the summer, just reaching out to faculty. And what we're doing now is we took the next semester's course list, and we're identifying multi-section high enrollment courses because we'll get more bang for our buck. And we're checking the bookstore to see if the textbooks are particularly expensive, or in some cases the textbooks are really cheap, and then we don't bother with them. So we're trying to do some filtering there. And then what we do, now here's the thing, I really recommend the survey that LJ and Taylor Francis did. I read this Librarian one carefully, and I've seen some highlights from the faculty one. It really informs what this is all about. So we send them, in all of our test cases, we send them a list of books. We go to their syllabus, we see what they're doing, we actually look at the book they're using. We go to Faculty Select, which is a very inexpensive portal to tens of thousands of unlimited use ebooks. They cost generally between $150 and $300, but you can use them for hundreds of students over and over again. So just think about it. If 20,000 students paid in $5 to a tech fee, you'd have 100 grand. You could replace a lot of the textbooks if this model really can scale. So it's very popular. So, but we do have to send them a list. We think you might like these, so it takes a little time. If the course is really specialized, sometimes we have to go to Gobi because we don't see enough books in Faculty Select. And then sometimes we'll go to the ILS, we'll find something that's embedded in one of our subscriptions. So we have to give them something rich enough that they buy, that they want to be a hero. So we send them the samples, and then what's really important here is that the Faculty Select lets them preview it. They can read the entire book that they're thinking of adopting. And that is essential, because there's just no way they're going to, on faith, take a link to a book and say, yeah, I'll run with it. Nice title. So that's really important. We do, though, again, you see, I don't just say, here's Faculty Select, take it or leave it, because that actually doesn't build enough credibility. I say, see what you think, and it's always, here's this and something else. So we often actually do find, reasonably we find alternatives in the catalog, things that are part of our subscription bundles. We always upsell or cross-sell. As soon as the faculty member says, I want a particular ebook to use in my textbook, they get a LibGuide, they get offers to, we'll stream videos for you. Do you have a paper? Can we provide research? It says, I mean, we just give them, you'll see some examples. It's a wonderful way to really pile on, and they don't feel like you're piling on. They just feel like you're giving them lots of good stuff. So you see that. Again, we pay for the ebooks with tech fees. The problem is getting enough faculty to move fast enough to spend the tech fee. We use learning tools interoperability. So whenever we buy an ebook from Faculty Select or elsewhere, we create a LibGuide shell, and we put a lot of effort into design and whatnot. And so we put the book in there, and then we go to the back end of we have Blackboard as our LMS, but it works for Canvas, it works for all of them. And basically you put the code number for the LibGuide into the Blackboard shell, so when the faculty member logs in as the teacher, they can just click, and the LibGuide and the book is right there. So that's a really nice way. Again, we cut some corners when we do that. We don't have to do as much hand-holding. And part of the way I'm pitching this is that it's an asset in our inventory. We're so dollar-oriented. We have a good-sized school, 15,000 FTE, but it's expensive between the maintenance and the building and everything. So it's really tight. So what I say is, look, you have a program of study, public health, approved by the Board of Higher Ed. You have courses inside that program of study approved. Now you have a syllabus approved. You have a textbook free to all the students, approved and paid for, and it can be used over and over again. It's a nice package. If you're thinking business-like, if you're sitting in the provost's office crunching numbers, it's a nice way to push it. So here's just an example. This is just maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Someone called me up, and she was on a grant. She came back from Peru and said, I'm teaching Intro to Public Health. I jumped into Faculty Select, and bingo. I sent her a bunch. I sent her quite a few. I mean, maybe sent her 10 or 12. She's right back, oh, these are perfect. I want them. But then we did the thing of we tried to, it's like a fish on a line, So we created a nice little LibGuide. Wouldn't you like that? And any movies you want to stream? Oh yeah, and do your students need access to databases? Do they need tutorials? So we started putting that stuff in, put the movie in, and then we put it in, we embedded it. She said, well, how do I use this? I said, go to Blackboard, click on Tools, it'll be right there. I said, kid, it's automatic, don't worry. So good. I said, Maria, you're a hero. And so this is the model. If we can do this 1,000 times a semester, man, it would be sweet. That's the goal. A couple other quick ones. So this fellow was Associate Dean. Now we haven't reeled him in as far. See, he's just doing the book. But we will. He called me, he said, look, the book is $200. I got 50 students, can I save them a few bucks? So I did the same thing. I sent him 9 or 10 out of Faculty Select. I might have wandered a bit to Gobi, but then, and he said, I like it. He said right back, he said, let's do it. So we made the guide, shut it back out and put it into his Blackboard shell. And now he's telling all his colleagues. So that's good in terms of credibility. This is an interesting one. This is 300 students. The textbook was $100. So I talked to her this summer. I said, save $30,000. She's the hero. She said, I want to be a hero. But she overreached, or maybe not. You guys got to think about this. She picked an OpenStax book, which is in Faculty Select. And she said, now I'm a hero twice over. Because you don't have to pay it. The library doesn't have to pay it. And the problem is, 3 weeks into the course, she called me and she said, I love OpenStax. My colleagues, the adjuncts who teach the course with me, love OpenStax. It's a generous outpouring of knowledge by specialists who are giving it freely to the world. But she says, God damn it, they put too much in. And she said, we love it because we know it. It's all our favorites. They played all our favorite songs. But she says, the kids, it's buried them alive. So she's doing right now, and we have a librarian helping her. She rewrites each week's course lesson in PowerPoint from the OpenStax. She says, when I'm done, I'll have a processed OpenStax. So what she said to me, she said, George, for $150, you could have bought a Faculty Select book that was edited. and we would have had 300 students, all of them using the $150 book. She said, I think I might have reached too far. Anyway, so just it's a thought when you wander. But we worked with her. We assigned a librarian to work with her week by week. So we didn't want to hang her up, and I didn't really want her bad-mouthing this whole program. So she's happy. And this professor actually was at the UMass Amherst Open Educational Resource Conference, and so I was just chatting with her, and she said, "This is a new course. It was just approved, never been taught." So we went into this is a Faculty Select book. We sent her a handful right away. And again, she's new to the school, she's new to the library. So, but we will bring her in. We will have lots more library services integrated on that page, and the page is already in Blackboard. So we've kind of come a long way with that. So a couple of takeaways, and please, jump in, because it's a big subject. It really is. A lot of ways to go at it. I just feel fortunate in that over the last 4 or 5 months, a lot of pieces have been falling into place, and I think it will scale. But I'm trying to be really, really thoughtful. So some of the takeaways. I do find faculty, give me the evil eye when I say the book is part of a subscription. Because they, well, what about when we lose subscription, or when they take it out, when they pull it from the bundle? So I always say, now we're buying it, even if it's in a subscription, we're going to buy it. So I think it's better to tell them that we'll own it, even if they ever, even if the book price goes up, they can update it. We have actually one professor who does that. He updates the free book. I think that the unlimited ebook license approach is the low fruit in the OER, textbook affordability. I just think with the faculty select tools, with the other tools available, with the platforms we have, the ways to integrate it, I think we have credibility. We can show almost any faculty member a viable set of options. And they won't all jump, but we have probably maybe 3,000 approved courses. So if we over a couple of years can get maybe 2,500 of them into the free zone, that would be a real relief for the students. So that's the goal. They have to preview it. They really have to kick the tires a lot. The OER, as I saw with the business ethics, the whole OER approach really is like giving your nephew a pony, and you get mad, your sister's upset. It really can be costly to support an OER book if you get into that. So, not that I would. This is like everything goes, anything goes. I did have one professor with a book he wrote, and tried to publish it. He ended up just like putting it on a wiki. But I don't encourage it. The upsell or the cross-sell, where you embed all of the goodies, all of the wondrous resources of the library, all of that engagement and all of that enrichment, you put that on LibGuide and you just put it automatically into the LMS, and suddenly it's just there. Some things to anticipate. More often than I expected, I have to expand the faculty select search. Probably at least half the cases. I have to, only because if I send them only what's in faculty select, I'm afraid they're going to say, that's not for me. It's like, I took the train here, I took Amtrak, and my wife will only take trains in Europe. I say, for God's sakes, they're the same trains. But she won't do it. So faculty might see a somewhat watered down or just a less than perfect group of books. So I always try to nail it, because there's so much good material that's published out there. So you do need a little bit of time to do these side searches. Now here's the thing. It's a little like standing on a hornet's nest. Even though we were just doing a lot of pilots over the summer, you get them in, you kind of get them in motion, and then a lot of them they want to go off in different directions. So it stimulates course pack demand pretty significantly. So it actually puts demand on staff. So we had a professor teaching a new course for non-science majors, science for non-scientists, called Kitchen Biochemistry. And we sent him everything in Faculty Select. We went through the catalog, Gobi, and he actually was on sabbatical building this course, so he had time on his hands. And I think his wife was sending him out of the house for long periods of time. So he went nuts. So what he created was a reading packet for all 15 weeks of the course, including I have to buy a dozen books that weren't available. And he picks 10%. He loves this thing. Oh, 10%. He said he's proud. He said, I can get 10% out of anything, and it'll be the value. So it's a big job. I got people working for putting this thing together for him. So you don't know. It is not going to necessarily be all smooth. They do ask. Others, they say, sometimes they'll even take the textbook, and they say, but what about some videos? What about some good, we had a guy teaching a course on the birth of tourism, like Egypt and, English people on camels in 1805, in Egypt. And so we got him onto the unlimited use books, but then he said, I want Thomas Cook, the whole archive, which we couldn't afford. He said, well, there's got to be a lot of open educational stuff about the history of tourism. So that tied up somebody for 2 weeks. But he was thrilled. He's a rising star on the faculty. He's head of our new first generation college student program. And he's a great ambassador for it. So it happens. As I said earlier, someone's going to come up to you sometime and say, I got a textbook in my file drawer. Will you help me publish it? And I don't actually have the answer to that one. And I haven't actually published it. One guy who had the book in his drawer ended up doing it as a wiki. So that would be for you guys. And I look for it when I'm at a conference. I'm going to hear you guys talk about how you published the book that they asked for. And then the last thing is that the humanities people who have, we're really a tech school, we're a polytechnic, and the humanities people have traditionally always felt like our second citizens, but when they saw how many ebooks with various licensing, and they'll go with a 3-user license, because the classes are small, it's 19 or less, they kind of really went crazy on me with long lists. So, of course, book like a course on Ottoman diplomacy in the late 19th century, suddenly we're just buying 12, 15, 18 ebooks for it. And we're looking for them. We're helping to find more and more. And at first, they were a little skeptical. They said, no, we need all these university press books on reserve, print reserve. And I showed them the data. I said, they go out once. So, so we put them, in the e-reserve. We put them just into the Blackboard, and they get hit a lot. So, so we're getting a lot of surprise demand from the humanities. Go figure. Then the last thing I want to say, to put this a little bit, to go from the recipe into kind of a perspective on this. We're calling it NOLO, for no cost, hashtag NOLO, N-O-L-O, no cost, low cost. It's between OER and McGraw-Hill, Cengage, and Pearson, who are really making a big push. I mean, the Spark people talk about that a lot. So, on the pure OERs, everything's free. The school doesn't pay. It's and then what the big textbook publishers are doing is doing these inclusive access. They're doing these deals. McGraw-Hill is even trying to do it 5 courses for $200, so they can stay within the $40. But they really are trying to high things up. So what I always say, let the faculty select.
We're just like selling my
But if you think about it, yeah, it's an EBSCO portal, right? But EBSCO's selling books that are published by lots of people. It's opening up the faculty's engagement with their topics. They really are, in some ways, putting together a new set of course material. So it's a really, it's good in the bigger sense. And it's a nice way, if we just rest on everything has to be free to everyone and faculty have to write free textbooks for all the courses, I think we're going to get stranded. Whereas I think this way we can make it real. Every course, every semester, you open Blackboard, the book is there, and it's free. Bingo, and plus all the related materials that you need. It just seems like we should be able to get there. So what I want to say is that with this kind of recipe, making the faculty heroes, what we see is that the faculty do select. They really do, maybe more than we want. The students do save serious dollars, and the students do succeed because they all have the book on day one, and the library engages everyone. So we just it's like it wins across the board. So that's my effort to, it's probably a Marxist way to say it about this dialectic between the product and the faculty attitudes, but there is a nice solution there if we put it all together. Should we do questions now? Or?
Well, let's clap. We're happy to take questions from anyone.
I have a follow-up question. We have a large STEM program at UTA, University of Texas, Arlington. One of our challenges is the homework banks and the problem banks. How do you address that in terms of OER or affordability?
Well, I mean, it's an issue. A lot of the OER that's out there. Like the business ethics OpenStax does have homework, it has quizzes. They are diligently. So if a faculty member really hinges on those extras, I think, I'm going to look for courses where I know there's a strong OER presence, where I know there's 3 or 4 good options that have all of that, especially when there's multiple sections. The other way with this program, I'm more likely, like we have seminars in bioengineering, biotech engineering. It's really a big growing program, and they've committed. They only do faculty select e-textbooks, but again, it's mostly graduate, so they're not looking for the. But the other thing is and I don't know how this will sell, but the quizzes and the enrichment and all this stuff that it's McGraw-Hill, Cengage 1 and Pearson 1 that are cooking up kind of addictive deals, to get another generation of high margin products going. So in some ways, I think at some point we're going to be working with faculty about stand up for faculty, stand up for your freedom and the career you've built, kind of take a high road. And we have a professor who's leading basically a teaching redesign initiative. He wants people to think about not just using the same textbook over and over again. He's trying to get everyone to rethink how they teach and the materials they use. So, of course, he was our first customer, for the faculty selected. So he only does, he actually does a lot of Scandi resources in smaller pieces. But I think he'll be one of the people in the committee that he's building to try to get folks. And then maybe we'll find people will start selling questions, right? If there's a marketplace. Anybody here? Probably some business people.
Well, we have, at Cambridge, we publish a lot of physics problems, and they can buy them. But and they're there. But how are they scaffolded? And this is the part I think your instruction will say, and this is, I think, the challenge for this, is that a textbook isn't just information. It's scaffolded, it's structured towards learning. You're not just putting in information, you're putting in teaching. And that's the challenge. I think there's a lot of stuff that can work this way that you're describing. But I some of the
No, you're absolutely right. The woman who does, my colleague who does all of these guides, she's in her 60s, but she wanted to take a math course. And she took it at Cape Cod Community College. And they use a Pearson book with all of the scaffolding and structure. And even while she's doing these guides, she says, if we're teaching math to people like me at Cape Cod Community College, we better ask them to pay the $100 for the Pearson book. I just think that's going to be an open issue that we'll work on as we go forward. Even if we take 50, 60, 70% of the courses off that would make a big dent.
Adopting a new textbook is a lot of work for a faculty member. Do you have any sort of incentive to provide for that?
No, and no, really, because we've tried over and over again, year after year, with grants, all kinds of things, and it's never scaled. In fact, it's almost never led anywhere. The big example is Amherst got a physics professor to publish a text, sort of on a wiki platform that saves them a lot of money because of the expensive text. But even there, they haven't, for all the effort they throw at it. And this is where, looking at the courses, looking at the syllabus, is your subject something that you can sort of parse it out? And if we put a few books, don't forget, they can buy 2 or 3 or 4, we'll buy as many books as they want. For the biochemistry, 12 books. So you can find what you want and what you need.
George, I just wanted to add something, excuse me. So on this is a very good point, and I've heard this before about the time it takes to be able to switch out my current textbook to a new one. And I've talked to a few customers who have done programs, like Nevada State does a program over the summer where they actually work individually with faculty. What was the data about? Don't send me mass emails, work with me direct, right? And it's an effort. I mean, everything George described is a huge effort, but they work with them individually, and if they make the switch, they give them $1,500. It costs to do that, though, right? But hopefully, the net gain is better in the end.
And maybe we could take it out of the tax rate. That might figure that out.
So I have a question of the incredible volume of frontlist, backlist books that exist. When you go to faculty select, out of, what subset of the entire universe of books are the recommendations coming from, and how are they generated?
So are you asking how we determine what ebooks to actually include in faculty select?
That's a great question. They're always unlimited use.
Right, well, that's the key.
They always have very modest.
Unlimited user
DRM,
access is the
very
key.
modest.
DRM free, unlimited user access. Well, we also have the Gobi ones where we work with the top publishers, but that is the criteria. It has to be something that ultimately would be free, no cost.
It always allows like 50, 60, 70 page downloads or print. And then if you come back the next day, you can do it again. So there's some DRM, but it's pretty light. And that's proven to be really essential. But I was wondering how you guys do that. But that's why you have to go into Gobi sometimes or into the ILS to just expand
The
it.
magic of our developers who are sitting in the back of the room, so I'm crediting them. Other questions?
More so to you, to what extent are the texts being vetted for accessibility? One of the main issues that I personally had, especially as someone who is reliant on the screen reader, a lot of the books, particularly from the EBSCO platform, I've had a large difficulty using, particularly because either the PDFs, when you are able to download the PDF is locked down and OCR isn't really functioning properly, and my screen reader can't read those things. So what steps is EBSCO taking to ensure the accessibility of their platform?
So this is a larger question about accessibility. I'm sort of going to be looking at you, John, Brendan, over there to help me answer this question. I would say this first, just in response, particularly around faculty select. Accessibility is a big investment in the company in general. We can't necessarily control what happens with the OER titles that we get because that comes from outside place. What we can be in control of is the ebooks that we provide, right? And so as much as possible, we're trying to make sure that those are accessible, but I think that maybe you might have something to add there.
Well, we do have 500,000 EPUB titles mixed into our corpus for EBSCO ebooks. Those do better as far as accessibility, and we're actually working on enhancing the EBSCO host and EDS platform, and that effort is ongoing. It will be going on for the next year or two. And we're building better accessibility into that platform right now. So we hear you, we've heard that story many times, and we're actively moving out on it.
We have to acknowledge that we're not there yet, though. So fair question, thank you.
But it's a publisher partnership as well. We need to
Right.
get the right materials from the publishers, and more as we engage publishers, they respond well to these types of talks.
And I could say for Taylor and Francis, I mean, we actually have an accessibility working group that's has been in place now for about 6 months, if not longer, and so they are actively working on the different aspects of that. So I think everybody hears that concern and knows that it needs to be addressed.
And we test everything. And our online school, they really test. And so far, it's only a few dozen over the summer, but they all passed. We didn't get any feedback.
The reason why I ask is that kind of testing ends up falling into me.
I think there was something personal going there, absolutely. Right, duly noted.
Now, they threaten they're
Great
gonna
question.
charge me if they
Thank you,
get
John.
sued by somebody that's trolling.
Oh.
How you like that? Well, draw us your wages. So we check everything, we're really careful. And sometimes I do go back, I ask EBSCO a lot of questions, and like Sarah and all, they kind of talk me through it, and so far we've always been able to set it up that it works.
I do want to mention that EBSCO is also working with the Carroll Center for the Blind. We're very close to them proximity-wise. And so having people who are visually impaired and who need JAWS and screen readers go through our products is an essential part of the deaf process.
Yeah, for the testing, absolutely, it definitely is an eye-opener to watch that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we work with sight impaired. I had a sight impaired intern for a year as we worked on the new platform to inform us of what we were doing well and what we weren't. It's very helpful.
And are y'all testing for compatibility with like NVDA as well as JAWS? Because JAWS the licensing fee for JAWS is quite a hurdle to jump. And particularly at our institution, we we tend to favor NVDA mostly because of its affordability aspect, but also there are certain functionalities with certain plugins that make it a little bit more usable when it comes to certain browsers. So
Yeah, we want to democratize that access as much as we can, so we'll take that into account for sure.
How is Read Write Gold? You use that at all? That's one that we've been using. We use, I think, JAWS and Read Write Gold.
I've used it. I personally have had more success with NVDA, but it's mostly because of my workflow. So.
Other questions?
I have a comment for George. In terms of OER textbook publishing, our institution or at the library, we have a digital press that work with faculty to publish the textbook through OERs that they prepare. So maybe we can talk later, form a partnership, maybe find a faculty in our institution, work with yours so we can actually
I
publish.
got a math text for you. Arlington, right?
Yeah,
Next to
Arlington.
You're on. That sounds good.
You had a question over here? Yes.
I had a question. At my institution, this conversation has really taken off about OERs in just the last 12 to 18 months. But one of the hurdles that we're surprised that we're having to overcome is a lot of faculty, both newly mid-career and mid and late career, question the credibility of sources if they do not have a price tag attached to them. They say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not, no, yeah, unless my students can pay for something, it's not a quality source.
So the quality issue comes up, right? So we're working with a specific OER providers that actually you can go to their websites and see what their peer review process is, which I try to make that available to our sales team because this comes up a lot, from a quality perspective. And, the reality is that we want to do the best we can to make sure that when we're the ones that we're working with are obviously of quality that would be acceptable. It's not 100%. But it does help when they do publish, what they do for their quality gates and what the peer review process is.
But that's why the emergence of faculty collections over the summer was so big, because we paid faculty money, departments, to review OER. Different departments, and everyone rejected every OER book that we presented, that it wasn't, they didn't like the provenance or whatever about it. So now we have a book that's from Rutledge, or it's from a different publisher, and it's what they're used to. So they see that it's a much lower hurdle in terms of credibility. As long as you don't send them a really bad book. That's the one thing. That's the one thing with staff
Doesn't mean you didn't pay for it.
Yeah. No, because then if you send them a bad book, they think this guy's an idiot, and you never get him back.
You get one shot.
How are you making that judgment though? How are you
Exactly.
knowing only favors few?
I spread it out. No, I give them 18, and I figure out the odds are much better.
Options. It's certainly one way to go about it.
Yeah, well, with the biochemistry of the kitchen, he didn't like what I sent him, so he went his own way. So, but I think I sent him enough that he believed I was legit, that he could work with me.
It does astound me, because you do run into faculty. We had a situation, about a year or two ago, where someone wanted to use an image book. We didn't have stock. It was over in the UK. It wasn't gonna be here. So I said, look, your library could buy this book for $400 and you can access it through the ebook. I don't wanna do that. It's the same
Why
book.
not?
Students don't read it. They don't want to, there's this whole issue too of learning from E and learning from print. That is another dynamic
that
here
as well.
that does come into play.
Yes, absolutely.
We've been asking that one, because that would kept me awake for years. And the faculty now are saying, it's what the fellow Brewster was saying this morning. They go in for pieces of things, and you look at the usage. Faculty are all saying that it works very well. They parse it into chapters. The other thing is we're going with Open Athens, so we're going to track the grades like Kennesaw State did, or we're going to track the grades against the use of the ebook. Now the trustees are going to love that one. Well, we will strip out the identity. This grade got this, use the book this much. The faculty really like that because it's hard to do it in Blackboard to track the links against the. In fact, I don't think they can track it against the individual email address. Maybe they can, but they don't like to do it. So they said if we can do it Open Athens, they'll be all over it. I mean, it seems like we have it's like, I really loved what Brewster was saying this morning about it's the time now to do certain things, you know, in terms of our profession, the information we share. And I think it's a really good time to do something with these textbooks. And I was just so delighted to see all of the high quality content that's now, we can get at and it's affordable. And they are throwing money at me. So, you know, if you had 20,000 students and they each put $5 in the hat, right? You take the $100,000 and you buy a bunch of, you know, unlimited use ebooks. None of us buy any textbooks for $5. So the economics are really beautiful, as long as you can get through all the, and that's why the survey stuff is so great that Library Journal did. And,
Another
really.
question?
Not a question, just a comment to add to what somebody else in the back mentioned. One of my colleagues was speaking to a new faculty member in the history department and was trying to talk to them about OERs and, you know, new resources and what's available out there. And when this faculty member, when they went to their colleagues, again, this is a new faculty member, they went to their colleagues in the history department, their colleagues just said, oh, just use course packets, that's what we all do. Just go. So basically, do what's already established, what's already accepted as the norm, that which requires the least work and time and effort. So right there, what concerns me is the conversations we're not having, that we're not hearing about, that, again, it's just business as usual for the majority of the departments at our campus.
Yes.
Versus where we could help with an impact.
You are echoing exactly what I was saying earlier about that challenge, right?
And
You have to get to them directly somehow, right?
One of the questions or the open-ended responses from on the library survey was saying having to educate faculty on the resources and really what is OER, what are the
Options.
benefits, options, and that they needed to stop doing what they always do, especially the later career faculty and stuff, not wanting to kind of break the mold.
It's a journey, one step at a time, right?
But we're target marketers. I mean, as librarians, we can really target courses, faculty members, departments. You know, you sort of know who's going to take the bait if you throw something in the water, you know, and then you work it from there. And then they talk to their colleagues. You know, there's always going to be 20% probably who wouldn't even take your phone call, but we'll get I think we can get a really good chunk. Because they're so ticked off that the students aren't buying the damn books. The sell-through is of course, it's 25, 30%, you know? And so they tell you, the student, they get into class, who read chapter 9, and it's clear no one's read chapter 9, you know, or most of, so they have it. And then the other thing is, just in terms of the LibGuide, if we have a professor who parses out the Introduction to Mechanical Engineering, it's a free e-textbook, but he does we have a program called Brain Shark where he narrates PowerPoints. So he does a Sunday night PowerPoint, and he emails his students, it's like 3 or 4 minutes, he said, this week, you are going to learn about why, you know, something collapses under stress, and be sure to read, and he attaches the link. And he said, you know, and then they come to class, and he said he's getting a really high rate of reading the damn chapter with using the tools we have.
I think you make a really good point there, because I don't think it's just about having the book to engage in the reading. It's not sufficient. There has to be the engagement. If anyone didn't watch the hypothesis and annotation session that was earlier today.
But it's like the course itself. The faculty is magic. So, you know, so we give them more tools, more enrichment, more ways they can do their magic. And you know, the enrichment piece is really big. I was kind of downplaying it because I'm, you know, talking more about the textbook part, but for my career as a librarian, using this as a wedge to get all of the other goodies into the students' lives, that's the sweet spot.
We just have a few more minutes if there are other questions. This has been really, really great. All right.
The report, the library report is available for download. When we put the slides up on, you'll be able to link to it. And then, like I mentioned, the faculty report, the full write-up of that report will be available, I think, by the end of this month, which will also, and we can have that up on the board. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.